Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Grivadari Jaya Grivadari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Grivadari Jaya Grivadari. Yasodanandana Raja Dhanaranjana Jaya Raja Dhanaranjana. Yasodanandana Raja Dhanaranjana Jaya Raja Dhanaranjana. Yamuna Dhiravarachari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Yamuna Dhiravarachari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Grivadari Jaya Grivadari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Grivadari Giridharadari. Yasodanandana Raja Dhanaranjana Jaya Raja Dhanaranjana. Yasodanandana Raja Dhanaranjana Jaya Raja Dhanaranjana. Yasodanandana Raja Dhanaranjana Jaya Raja Dhanaranjana. Yamunatiravarachari Jaya Kunja Vihari. Yamunatiravarachari Jaya Kunja Vihari. Yamunatiravarachari Jaya Kunja Vihari. Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramhansa Parvadakshariya Asadhara Siddhushi Shriman. His Divine Grace Shalasi Bhaktivedanta Swami Raj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Haribo Slava Zabrani Bhaktam Slava Shri Guru Shri Grangi Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Buddhaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tenamane Namaste Sarasatundeve Gauravani Vicharne Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyadi Siddharne. Om Agyantamanandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Pradana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shiva Sakans Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhana Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Trivyacha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 22. Bali Maharaj surrenders his life, text number 31. Eshame prapita stanam dusprapam amarayapi sarvarna antarasyayam bhavitendra mad ashrayaha eshame prapitak stanam dusprapam amarayrapi savarner antarasyayam bhavitendra mad ashrayaha eshame prapitastanam dushpapam amarayapi savarner antarasyayam bhavitendra madashrayaha. Ladies. Eshame prapitakstanam Pudus prapam amarayapi savarner antarasyayam bhavitendra madashrayaha. Esha Bali Maharaj may by me prapitaha has achieved stanam a place dusprapam extremely difficult to obtain amarai api even by the demigods savarne Antarasya during the period of the Manu known as Saravani. Ayam, this Bali Maharaj, Bhavita, will become Indra, the Lord of the heavenly planet. Varashrayaha, completely under my protection. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Lord continued, because of His great tolerance, I have given him a place not obtainable even by the demigods. He will become the king of the heavenly planets during the period of the Manu known as Saravani. Purport. This is the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even if the Lord takes away a devotee's material opulences, the Lord immediately offers him a position of which the demigods cannot even dream. There are many examples of this in the history of devotional service. One of them is the opulence of Sudama Vipra. Sudama Vipra suffered severe material scarcity, but he was not disturbed and did not deviate from devotional service. Thus he was ultimately given an exalted position by the mercy of Lord Krishna. Here the word Mad Ashrayaha is very significant, because the Lord wanted to give Bali Maharaj the exalted position of Indra. The demigods might naturally have been envious of him and might have fought to disturb his position. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead assured Bali Maharaj that he would always remain under the Lord's protection. Mad Ashrayaha. Next text. Till Bali Maharaj achieves the position of King of Heaven, he shall live on the planet Sutala, which was made by Vishwakarma according to my order. Because it is especially protected by me, it is free from mental and bodily miseries, fatigue, dizziness, defeat, and all other disturbances. Bali Maharaj, you may now live there peacefully. Purport: Vishwakarma is the engineer or architect for the palatial building in the heavenly planets. Therefore, he was engaged to construct the residential quarters of Bali Maharaj. The buildings and palaces on the planet Sutala must at least equal those on the heavenly planets. A further advantage of this place designed for Bali Maharaj was that he would not be disturbed by any outward calamity. Moreover, he would not be disturbed by mental or bodily miseries. These are all extraordinary features of the planet Sutala, where Bali Maharaj would live. In the Vedic literature, we find descriptions of many different planets where there are many, many palaces, hundreds and thousands of times better than those of which we have experience on this planet Earth. We speak of palaces. This naturally includes the idea of great cities and towns. Unfortunately, when modern scientists try to explore other planets, they see nothing but rocks and sand. Of course, they may go on their frivolous excursions, but the students of the Vedic literature will never believe them or give them any credit for exploring other planets. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Satarane. So if anyone's tired before we start, maybe you could stand up, do a little stretching or something. Don't be embarrassed. Here it explains that there are other planets. Now, probably none of us have ever gone to another planet. In fact, maybe some of us haven't gone outside of Slovenia. Still, how do we understand? Prabhupada is constantly reminding us that actually in the heavenly planets, the life there is thousands of times better than the life in this planet. Because one of the problems of modern society is that they restricted people's options. And that restriction is all based upon ignorance. And our access to understand what is ignorance and what is reality is, first of all, our intelligence. Now, with our intelligence, we can utilize it in different ways. We can utilize it to try to figure out how to get the limited opportunities that are supposedly offered to us. Or, by hearing the Vedic literature, we can find out about other options that are offered to us and trying to take advantage of them. Now, our intelligence can discern, for instance, that we're not this body. If we find that interesting, most people don't find it very interesting that they're eternal. They rather work hard through their whole life to try to survive in this body. But to find out that they're actually eternal anyhow, no matter what happens to their body, it's not very interesting to them. They want to find out how to survive in a temporary body as long as possible. If someone can give you an extra year, you think they're as good as God. But if someone can give you eternity, you think they're wasting your time. So that's called Maya. Now, of course, people will say that this idea that we're eternal is just some sentiment. Next, they'll tell us that there's a God. And even above that, they'll tell us we're supposed to surrender to God. Such sentiment. But we can also use our intelligence, and that intelligence, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, at the end of the 18th chapter, where he says that Jagnai, what is it? Oh, got the wrong one here. Here we go. Adyeshite chayayamam dharmam sampadam avyam jnana jagnena tenaham ishtaksvam iti me miti. That one who studies the sacred conversation of mine worships me by his intelligence. So we're supposed to worship Krishna beginning with our intelligence. Because if we have no intelligence, then we won't worship Krishna. Now, why do I say that? Because Krishna has said, why should we worship Krishna? Krishna has explained to us something that no one else is explaining to us. If you go on the internet, except for some lectures by the devotees, you'll never find anyone, no matter how learned or influential they are, tell us that we're not this body. And because we've been so much conditioned by bad association, we don't even take it seriously that we're not this body. We think, well, that's a nice idea. I wish I wasn't this body. I wish I was eternal. But it's not possible. How can it be? Everyone's telling me you're the body, so I must be my body. Besides that, I love my body, so I don't mind being my body because I love it. I want to serve it forever. Please let me serve it forever. But Krishna says, Denosmi nita dehe kamaram yovanam jara tata dahantara praptir diryas tatra namuyati. Krishna tells us our body's changing. So anyone here is going to deny the fact that their body's changing? That maybe everyone else's body is changing, but I'm a good person, so my body doesn't change. There's all these bad people around me that change. No, everyone's body is changing, and everyone knows what the final change is. As I've said before, if you want to find out what your future is, you can learn a science like astrology. Or you can learn palmistry in 5 seconds and find out what your destination is. Does anyone here know palmistry? You know palmistry? What's that? The short one, yes. So everyone has a hand. The ladies can look at their left hand. You can look at your hand. See, this is called the index finger. Everyone has an index finger. And then you have your thumb. And in between the index finger and thumb, there's a line that usually goes from the index finger all the way down. Can everyone see that? Can you see it? And what happens? When it goes down, 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 and what happens? What's that? It stops. Yes, that's your future. It's right there in your palm. It's going to stop. Now you can take a knife and maybe extend it a little. But there's a limit, My God, I'm up to the other arm. Maybe I can get maybe you can get a longer arm or something. But there's a limit. So the body's changing, and there's a limit to how many times it's going to change. And then we have to leave it. But we ourselves, we're existing during all these different changes of body, and yet no one feels that they're actually changing. What we're conscious of, the body is certainly changing, but we don't feel like I'm changing. I don't feel like I walked in here as Peter and I'm walking out as Paul. I don't know what happened to Peter. No, we feel the same person. Even when we're asleep at night and we dream we're a bird flying in the air, we think we're the bird flying in the air. It's not that someone else is the bird. No, I'm the bird. I've become a bird. And I may become a bird in the future too. I'll still think I'm a bird, but I'll be the person that thinks I'm a bird. So we're eternal. It's just that we're eternally in ignorance right now. It's good to be eternal, but it's bad to be eternally in hell. Or in ignorance, which is about the same thing. Because why ignorance is hell? Because we think we're going to die. Everyone thinks they're going to die, but they're not going to die. We're going to live forever, for better or worse. Now, if you have to go to hell, then maybe you'd rather die, although you can't die. And if you're going to go to heaven, you may think, well, it's not so bad. I got this body, but it's not going to last very long. As a matter of fact, the more we enjoy in the material world, the quicker time goes. If you go to the dentist and you start hearing the drill, suddenly time stops. It doesn't move very quickly. That 1 minute that they drill the teeth is equal to 3 hours of watching television. And we're just counting every second as if it was 1,000,000 years. So when we're enjoying, time goes very quickly, and when we're suffering, it goes very, very slowly. Or slower. But still, we're eternal, and either we can eternally try to enjoy in the material world, or we can suffer in the material world, and that depends upon our activities. But our activities depend upon what we think are our options. If we hang out with people who their only option is either a brand A beer or a brand B beer, there's not very many options. But if we're eternal, then there may be other options. And at least the Vedic literature, even people who are not so God conscious, which most people aren't, still they give alternatives. They describe different planets where there are palaces and people have bodies which are subtler than our body. They're certainly made out of the same earth meaning not you go to the heavenly planets and you find the same earth that you dig up in the backyard here, if you can find a backyard. No, earth means simply relatively more solid. As a matter of fact, the most solid thing that we know of, two things that we know are solid. What does solid mean? It means it lasts longer than other things. Now water, it just flows. Of course it lasts, but it can evaporate. You can turn into ice. Fire is always changing. It burns things and sometimes it goes out. Air is always flowing and it disappears. But earth is the most solid thing we can find, so therefore we call it earth. It doesn't change. So what's the most solid earth that we know of? Does anyone know? What's the most solid thing we know of? A rock. I know something much more solid than a rock. What's that? Oh, I know something much more solid than a diamond. What's that? I know something much more solid than the diamond. Anyone know? What's that? Oh, I know something much more solid than the ego. What's that? We. The soul. Welcome. We, the soul, are much more solid than anything in this world. After all, Krishna says, Naidam chandanti shastrani, naidam dahati pavaka, chayanam kledayanti apo nushoshi marata. The soul cannot be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burnt by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. That's pretty strong, isn't it? We've been around eternally. I mean, that at last we've been lasting a long time. If you're eternal, you're pretty solid. So all of us are eternal. But our only problem is that we don't know who we are. And therefore we think ourselves to be something we're not. Now, beyond us, there is something called time. Now, one thing we know about time is that nothing that we can do has any effect on it. People put on makeup, they take soma rasa in the heavenly planet, but everyone dies anyhow. They grow old and die. It's something, time is changing everything. But time never changes. So we're eternal, time's eternal, the material nature is eternal, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's controlling the whole thing, he's also eternal. So with a little intelligence, we can see that. Just like with a little intelligence, we can understand, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that savasya chaham riddhi sanavishto. There is a little voice in our that's talking to us. Two voices, actually. Many, depends who you are. You may have many voices talking to you. Different ones for different times of the day. Right? But generally speaking, there's two voices. There's the voice of the super soul, telling us reminding us what to do. Do you ever notice it? Suddenly you get a remembrance. The thing is, no one appreciates it. They think, oh, sure, I naturally have a good, I remember it. No, actually, Krishna, especially if we're engaged in devotional service, then we're simply conscious of the fact that it's Krishna who's reminding us. The question is whether we take his suggestion or not. Like before we eat, to give an example. Krishna, if we hear this class, and I remind you, you should wash your hands we should all wash our hands before we eat. Now it's time to sit down at prasadam. We think, oh, the sink is so far away, and I'm so hungry, and my hand looks so clean. I washed it yesterday. And this instruction is so hard to find out, why did Krishna remind me? So Krishna reminded us, and we think, well, it doesn't really matter. Krishna will forgive me. Spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. No, Krishna is reminding us, and the next day we sit down to eat, and it goes, beep, beep, maybe you should wash your hands. Oh, shut up. Why are you disturbing my prasadam? Krishna says, oh, I'm sorry. I'm not going to agitate you. I'm your friend. My friends don't agitate me. And then we do that day after day, and one day we get sick, and we say, Krishna, why didn't you remind me to wash my hands? So Krishna will remind us, he'll try to remind us, but if we don't listen to him, then he'll stop reminding us after some time. He's our friend. He doesn't want to get into a bad relationship with us. Every time he says something, oh, Krishna, why you're disturbing me all the time. Why don't you go somewhere else? I can't, I'm your heart. I'm everywhere, sorry. All right, so the next best thing is I'll just give you forgetfulness. Maya will say, oh, don't wash your hands. That's foolish. Your hand is fantastic. It's just good as the way it is. All the superstition about washing hands is all superstition. Comes from some old book that no one reads anymore. You just sell them. You don't read them. or just you can follow them. It's too much. Now, if we recognize Krishna as a super soul, then he'll actually increase our memory. So if we hear something and then we apply it, especially if it's in the mode of goodness or transcendental, then the result is that Krishna it'll actually get strengthened. And every time it'll become a habit after some time. We won't even have to think about it because we'll be just directed by the super soul. Every time we sit down to eat, even before we sit down to eat, we'll wash our hands because we know we won't even think about it after some time. Oh no, this is part of cleanliness and purification of consciousness. Deva Dvija Guru Pragya Pujanam Socham Arjavam. Asteri in the mode of goodness is cleanliness. And if we can clean our hands, eventually we'll clean our hearts also. And if we forget it, we deny it, oh, cleanliness, that's old-fashioned, you know. I take a shower once every year. In case I'm not clean. Just as ritual. So if that's the case, then of course Krishna won't talk to us. And we'll become more and more covered over. We can't even follow the basic principles. Cleanliness, mercy, truthfulness, austerity. Then of course, then we'll simply get more and more in the mode of ignorance. Because that's what the opposite. But if we follow Krishna's directions, then we'll realize there is a super soul. There's a friend who's guiding me. And if I ask him, he can actually give me good intelligence, good direction. In the Bhagavad Gita and externally and within my heart. Then I'll realize that the whole universe has that option too. That why would this God who's in my heart, why would he just throw planets out, you know, create a world with all these planets that have no meaning? Just a bunch of rocks floating around. Why would we go through all the trouble? Creating the sun happens to give me heat and light, and the moon provides the juice of life to the vegetables. So at least we know 2 planets that have some use to me. But what are these other rocks just floating in the sky? They couldn't possibly be anyone living there because I'm not there. Otherwise, because I'm not there, they have no use. It couldn't be possibly, they have some purpose or some use, or God created them. And when we hear about the scientists, they went to the heaven, into the Earth, the moon planet, and they discovered it's just dust. And people know that, well, this is ridiculous. They couldn't, the first expeditions couldn't even, they sent some monkey up, the Russians, and they tried to get it through a certain part of the universe, and the monkey died supposedly because of the radiation. And yet these astronauts in this little spaceship, very thin, were able to survive going through the Van Allen belt, up and down without even having, scratch on their body. And they land on the planet, the rocket shooting, blasting on supposedly on the moon planet, and there's not one speck of dust raised from the moon planet. And then supposedly this module lands on the moon, the astronaut jumps out, and all the dust gets raised and flies everywhere because the moon became so ecstatic that it got the lotus foot of the astronaut on his body. And one after another, one anomaly after another is there. The astronaut plants the flag on the moon, and it starts to wave, although there's no air to wave it. And we're supposed to believe it. That the flag became so ecstatic, it was trembling out of ecstasy, that now it was on the moon. So it waved even without any air. Etc., etc. And why do people believe it? They go along because they don't want to disbelieve it. Otherwise, the whole thing would collapse. If people just use their intelligence and sort of that they're just being misdirected and cheated, but they think they have no alternative. They don't believe that there's a God. They have no information about who God actually is, about eternality. They have no information of how to escape from their conditioned life. They just have no information. So they settle for all these cheaters, telling them that we went to the moon, there's no life on other planets. And at the same time, they're constantly talking about UFOs. And in the UFOs, when they encounter them, there's only little green people coming. These little green people are coming for you. So you can't have it two ways. They land on the moon, and there's nothing there. There's nothing, and then there's little green people coming. And people, because they've been robbed of their real intelligence, therefore they accept everything blindly. And if they don't accept it blindly, they have to forget it through intoxication and other things. So they don't remember they're just being cheated, and they have no alternative to being cheated. Otherwise, how can they survive? Only this Krishna consciousness philosophy, which is so direct and straightforward, the eternality of the soul, the existence of the super soul, the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this is an alternative. And if people are practically engaged in devotional service, they can realize these things. Krishna consciousness promises eternal life, a life full of consciousness, full awareness of things as they actually are, and happy life, of which Bali Maharaj was experiencing a little bit. No miseries, no mental disturbances, no enemies, no threefold miseries. Krishna protected him. So he can protect us too, if that's what we want. And if we want something else, then that's what Krishna will give us too. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much. Any questions? Comments?
Question from Hare Krishna Maharaj about the contact with the super soul. How we can recognize the voice of the super soul?
Well, he knows the Bhagavad Gita by heart, and whatever he speaks comes from the Bhagavad Gita. Or he reminds us of something which is, we may not recognize as the Bhagavad Gita, but we call it conscience. He reminds us of things like what we promise to do and what the social norms are that we should follow. So Krishna is also conscience within our heart. Besides, in the higher realm, he not only gives us the directions that came from his other representatives, but he also, if we study Bhagavad Gita, he'll help us remember what he said in the Bhagavad Gita. And Maya will tell us, follow lust, follow anger, follow greed. Maya will always convince us that your false ego is supreme, and that she'll take what we do under Maya's direction will take away our spiritual intelligence and our remembrance of what actually we're supposed to be doing. He's speaking to us. He's trying to speak to us all the time. Problem is, the more we listen to him, the louder his voice comes, and the less we listen to him, the more Maya's voice comes. Just eat, sleep, mate, defend. And Krishna says, no. Yakshastra videm utsrija vartate kamakarata sasadima vapnoti nasukam naparam gitim. That one who follows the Shastra, one who doesn't follow the Shastra but acts whimsically, attains neither peace nor happiness nor the supreme destination. Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya karya vyastito gyatva shastram vinanokta karma kartam viharasi. Therefore one should know what is to be done or what is not to be done through the Shastra, and knowing what's to be done, what is duty, one should act so that gradually he can become purified. So Shastra, Krishna, Guru Sadhana, Shastra, and the Super Soul will tell us things that will help purify us. So we come to realize Krishna and the Super Soul and our eternality and reality. So they'll give us knowledge of how to come gradually to that platform. So that's Krishna and his representatives. So if we're doing something that helps purify us, then that's coming from Krishna. And if we're doing something that we're becoming contaminated by lust, anger, and greed, delusion, forgetfulness, and loss of intelligence, that's called Maya. Trividam narakasyedam dwaram nashitam atmanaha kama krodha tata lobhas tasmat etam trayam chajet. There are three gates leading to hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane person should become free from these three gates because they lead to the degradation of the self. Etanya pita karma. I always forget this verse. Etanya pita karmani. Eter vimukta kontiya tamodra strabirnara acharat yatamashrayas tatoyati puram gati. Anyone who becomes free from these three gates performs acts which are conducive to self-realization, and thus he gradually attains to the supreme destination. Okay, anything else? Pala Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.